So silent. Okay, welcome everyone. Nice to see some new faces and some very familiar ones as well. A new meetup today, interesting topics, some lightning talks, and we also have some new things to show ourselves. So I will be presenting that first. So yeah, we do the usual. So Flutter Belgium, we started in 2018. It's a Belgian community to bring people together, to learn from each other, to create a framework when everybody can share stuff and learn something new. And Chris has actually created the Flutter Belgium Meetup page in 2018. Jens behind the laptop there, and myself joined a couple of years back to assist Chris as well and build a live stream and to do some other stuff. And yeah, we actually passed 1,000 members in Meetup, which was the goal for the previous year. So that's a good achievement. I think for LinkedIn, we're almost at 1,000 followers, so that's also good. And I also noticed that on YouTube, we also have quite a lot of new subscribers, so we're at 360 or 380 subscribers, which is nice. I think the live streams that we've been doing don't have a lot of views during the live stream, but after the live stream, it's quite interesting to see that we're reaching people all over the world to learn from people who just present something here to a smaller audience, and that's nice to see. You can always join us on our website, on Slack, on Meetup, on LinkedIn, and all the socials. But we have a new branding, which you might have seen already in Slack, but also our slides have been slightly updated, and we also have a new website, which was just an HTML page with one image and a couple links. So now we rebuilt the entire website with the new branding. The full website is built in Dart, so we use Jasper for that. So it's rendered beforehand. So we actually create a static HTML page from Jasper. We want to do that because we want to have actually everything run in Flutter Belgium on Flutter or on Dart. That's the achievement of this year, actually. So the website is the first part. Then the second part is bringing the Made in Belgium website, which was previously a Next.js app, because we wanted to have proper SEO. But now that we have Jasper, we can do that as well in Jasper. So we also moved that into the actual website. So now if you scroll down, so from this page and you scroll a little bit down, then you will see this is a scrolling list, so you can also look at that. If you have an app that is not yet published on the Made in Flutter Belgium website, you can always add it. It's a GitHub repository currently, but we're also looking to move that to just a proper form instead of trying to figure out the bad documentation that I wrote. So that's also very nice. And then we have the familiar view from the previous one, which just uses the same data as before, but now on the same website. We also already have quite a lot of reviews from Chris, myself, and Jens. So if you want to add some reviews yourself, or you have some feedback for us, or you want to share something, we're very pleased that we can also just show that here. Would be very nice to see the actual community have a place where it's actually showing how we are doing it. If you look at the Meetup reviews, we have a 4.7 out of 5 rating, which I think is very good for 130 almost reviews. So that's nice. That's it for the website, so we will be working further on the app, which has not been updated for the branding yet, and we'll add some new features there as well, where you can look at the meetups, the page, the talks, the future meetups as well. So it will be more of a full community instead of separate websites and separate parts of the community. So if you want to do a talk, we're always looking for new speakers. We have two people from Aaltra today. I'm not sure where you're based. In Leuven. Okay, nice. And then we have Hugo as well, who will also give a talk, a lightning talk. So yeah, it doesn't matter how big, how short, so you can always do a talk. If you want to become a host and host an event at your company, you can also do that. Just reach out to Chris, Jens, or me, and we will figure it out. So yeah, for today, of course, thanks Aaltra again for hosting. It's always very nice to have a stage for the people, and then the speaker needs to stand on the actual floor. So no, very nice to always be here. Yeah, a lot of people from Aaltra always join the meetups as well, so that's very nice to see. Yeah, thanks again. So a small applause for Aaltra. So here you can see the new branding as well. So the first lightning talk will be from Hugo. You will already see a small preview here about a robot that he's programming and building. So that's cool. And then we have a new or another lightning talk. You found the picture. Yeah, Jens did that. So yeah, indeed. I'm not exactly sure what the title will bring, but we'll see. We'll see. Something like the horse? No, bring the horse. Okay, and then another talk. So the full talk from Bauke will be how do we actually create global ready apps? A lot of people build applications that are not only used by 100 or 1,000 people. So it's important that your app is stable, and then it can be ready for the entire world as well. And then, Aaltra is an IoT agency, so would make sense to also bring a talk on how to bring the hardware indeed into a Flutter app, or how to connect it as well. So really looking forward to that one. So we have actually 2 IoT talks today, which is quite unique. I think the first talk was from Peter, I think, at In the Pocket about IoT. So also an interesting one. Then at the end of every meetup, we do a raffle. We have some T-shirts and a dash. So if you want to join, you can install the app or scan the QR code and then join the raffle. It's also on the QR code here. So I will already continue the slides, but you can always scan the QR code during the break as well. And I still need to. Yeah, I will enable the raffle still, and I will remind you afterwards. So the next meetup will be at ICAPS in September, and then the one after will be in November at Unlocked in Leuven. But we still need to create the pages, etc. So you can sign up as well. So let's start with the first talk from Hugo.
Okay. So I think how I'm going to approach this talk is that literally it takes about 5 minutes to set it up. So I have to bring up the system and things like that. But I will explain with my simple slides what's going on, if I can find them. So they would be, and oops. Presentation. Okay. So, yeah, I'm not that conversant in office stuff, so, but I'll say this. So the title that I started with was My Backend is a Robot. Why is that? Because for you guys, most people here that use Flutter, the backend is some kind of web server or the cloud or something like that. Well, for me, it's the device that matters, okay? So for me, it's how do I connect, the premise is how do I create UIs, or how do I connect Dart, basically, to our robots, okay? And I do that by using a software package called Xeno, okay? So, but first, I mentioned that this thing is not a maker project. And actually, in order to deal with this, you have to have some conceptual knowledge of robotics, okay? Knowing that this is a link, that this is a joint, that there's motors here. You have to have some concept of mechatronics, okay? So this is an object that's mechanical, okay? It moves, it has in a certain Cartesian space, the terms start flying off real quick, okay? You have to have some knowledge of communication protocols, okay? Normally, for Flutter, historically, like there's the way to communicate Flutter with this type of machine is using WebRTC or its friends, okay? What I did, and this is where the knowledge of distributed systems and their protocols come in, is using something called Xeno, okay? Xeno is a protocol that was invented about 10 years ago, but it was only in the past 2 years that finally it was integrated into the software that is used for running robots, okay? And why is that important? Because normally the software that is with the communication layer that was used to make all the little things that in a robot talk to each other and move was DDS, for those who are familiar with that. DDS has its problems. Xeno corrects those problems, okay? You have to have good knowledge of C++, Python, and not these days even Rust, okay? Why? Because those are the languages that are used in robotics, okay? Flutter and Qt. Qt, again, traditionally all applications written for robotics have been written using Qt. So the challenge is, do we duplicate those Qt programs or not? I think it's not worth it. Okay, the Qt system works very well. So it's not about replacing programs that were written in Qt, it's about developing new UIs using the tools that Flutter can provide. Okay? ROS, Robot Operating System. That is the core software for running 80% of all the robots on this planet. Okay? This robot uses ROS for communication. And ROS, in very simple terms, is a publish-subscribe system. Okay, you have little nodes. One node can be the motor controller. Another node can be the kinematics solver. Okay, and they communicate by publish-subscribe. By necessity, you have to use Docker. Okay. Why? Because when you install ROS on your system, it just takes over your laptop. So how people work is by creating ROS, by using Docker. Is my time up? Okay. And if you know what QEMU and KVM is, then it's very handy because Docker allows you to create, normally how this is approached is that you have one container that is a very basic container that has no UI and it's just for the software that runs on the robot, and you have another container for all the visualization, simulation, and all that software, and then you connect to them, okay? That'll be clear soon. Now, the operating systems are Linux and Windows. Mac OS, even though this year in the latest ROS distribution is supported, you have to build it yourself. Okay? In Linux and Windows, you just download the Docker image, you download the app, and you do sudo app, and it downloads everything. If you're in robotics, the operating systems are Linux, number 1, number 2, and number 3, and then number 7 and 8 is about Windows. Okay? All right. So, oops, that's not there. This is. So what is Xeno? Xeno is an open protocol that this comes straight from the page. Okay? It says data in motion, data says REST communication, and microcontrollers multi-data, blah, blah, blah. What does that mean? It's for creating distributed systems, okay? It's very, very nice because it doesn't restrict what type of packet you can transmit over the wire, okay? Number 1. Number 2 is that it creates nodes and peers and routers that are resilient. Meaning, if you have a router and if something goes down, the peer-to-peer connections still keep going, okay? So for this robot, for example, when I bring up a ROS, Docker container with ROS, there's one router that I connect to, and then I have all the little nodes as little peers. If for some reason the robot is moving and I lose connection, doesn't matter, because the robot will, the other nodes will be able to communicate each other because they know where we are. Okay? You can query the network, see who is alive, where it is, what are the messages being transmitted. Very, very handy for doing this kind of work. Okay? It's been compared to MQTT, DDS, and everything else, and it shines a lot. I'm just glossing over. I'm going to do a plug here. Later, at the middle of the month, I will do a webinar for the Eclipse IoT, and I'll send a link for you're invited. And that's where I will do the deep dive. And I'll have the robot do something more fun. Okay? Okay. Then, I've been talking about ROS. Again, this is just copy and paste from their page. ROS, it provides tools. It's been around for 20 years. Okay, it was developed by the people from Willow Garage. If you remember that, for a robot that was around 20 years ago. But it was taken over by the robotics community because it first provided a way to build nodes, components, and make them talk to each other. And that was novel. Okay? And the ecosystem has grown a lot. If you need a solver for kinematics, you can find it. If you need to connect a camera, you can find it. If you need a simulator, you can find it. These days, if you need a node to connect AI to a camera to the robot to do some learning, you can find it. Okay? It's used. If there's a robotics department, university on this planet, it's probably using this. Okay? Like I said, it provides the plumbing. Okay, that's it. It doesn't give you any software to control any one particular robot. Okay, it's just the plumbing between things. Okay, and it gives, because it's been so long about, it gives you enough tools, so like visualization and a simulator. If I get this running, I'll at least show you the simulator, okay? And like I said, it's a community of people. Okay, so at this point, I would say maybe it's best that Monsieur comes up and does his talk while I set up the demo, if that's okay with everybody here, because it will take me a little time and I don't want to take your time, okay? But, what else am I missing? Xeno, computer, Linux, yeah, that's about it. Any questions, or do I do a quick QA or not?
You can if you want.
Sure. Any questions from anybody, or no? Okay, I was clear? Good. So excuse me, and I will try to get this up and running. Thank you. Yes. Oh, yes.
Ah ja, je mocht hem dat geven. Ja.
Maar hij heeft die andere.
Nee, dat is niet die werkt niet. Pak die maar.
So, yeah, this is something Flutter came on my radar.
I'll
Oh,
say.
you want another one?
Another one.
So, I had never heard about Flutter until about 1 year ago. Maybe 2 years ago, I started with Rust, and before that, 20 years of Python scripting. I'm not really a programmer. But then in Python, I tried to make something where I could say, these are the bells I have in the tower, and these are the weights and the sizes, and that's this. But I'm going to take a smaller configuration. So well, I made it like this with examples because I don't have a file system that I can easily reach on this one. But the desktop one, it can actually load from the file system the configuration. So let's say we have 12 bells. 12 bells with a mixed serial, why not? Okay. Okay, yeah, there it is. Okay, so now I have 12 bells, and I can say that I can change the notes of the bells, and then if I change the notes of the bells, the weight and the diameter changes. These are tuned bells. Then I can say that all these bells have striker, so a hammer, can be on the outside and it can be on the inside as well. So there are different kinds. You can also have a bell that can swing, and then you have a stronger striker that comes from the outside. So those are 3 types, and then you could also already, the striker could only be there, and then you need only the fets let's say that their inside strikers apply. So I can easily change them. Here it shows me, yeah, that's from my company, the code of the reference code. But it's also telling me when do you need to go to the next one. And in this case, if they're inside, you would need the lower one because it needs to fit if they're inside. Then you can also say you have a type of motor. And we have rotating motors with a wheel and a chain. And you can also have a linear motor. Then you don't have the wheel and the chain, then it's simply an aluminum plate that gets pushed away. So let's go with linear motors. And I think it's easy that I can change them all at once. Over here, before I had this and it didn't collapse. Now it collapses. So normally you can also say I'm in a specific country, I have a certain power grid. It's very important whether it's 3-phase or single phase, quite technical, but it matters. And then how many hertz, it matters a little bit less. And here I can say some customers have specific things that they always want, specific kind. So then I can store that on this side. For me, what I needed most of this is this kind of a list where I see all the products and then I can easily make a price quote. So then that was the most important part for me, but then I'm doing technical support, so I'm helping people on the phone, and then I'm getting questions. How do you go from one way of doing things? I bought it for 3-phase, but now I only have single phase electricity, and then they have to rewire stuff. So that's why I made also this wiring. It's nice that you can zoom in and out. You can select several at once. You can move them. All the motors have power, but they also have sensors. So you need to know where they are, what they're doing. So that's why they have sensors. These are linear motors. I'm going to move them up there. So then 6 wires come out, and then people are asking, how do I connect those wires? So then it's like this. Do you see that? Or is it like this? So if I change the power grid, then you will see that this bridge here in the motor is going to change. So I'm going to 3 times 230 volt. I'm not sure why that happens. They don't stay in place. Now do you see different kind of bridging inside the motor. But then if you change the power grid to single phase for America, often, then all of a sudden there are capacitors to create the extra phase. But then you can also change the motors to a different kind. I want rotate things once, and I want a different brand which is specifically made for that. And then all of a sudden there are not 6 connections in there, there are 3 connections, and the capacitor is already with the motor. There's just also a Belgian company that makes these motors. So they're better because they have better torque. What you can do here, because now it doesn't look very nice. These wires are all crossing. So you can also take them separately. Now these look good, but these don't look good. But then you can change that here somewhere. So this is for the custom motors, and now it looks a little bit better. And then sometimes people want to use different colors for the wire, so they can easily change that, or they don't want to see the section of the wire in the cable. So they can switch that on and off if that's clearer on their schematic. Then I try to make something different, where you see the cable and then the wires that split out of it, like more of an overview. This is work in progress. So inside the control cabinet, how the wirings and the devices that are in there, but work in progress. What do I have? The bus. So they're also, the commands are given through a serial bus with the Apollo. They also have different systems where it's simply a wire that has 220 do something or don't do something with the relay, but you can also have serial bus, and then it's its own kind of configuration to set it up. So I'm getting questions about that a lot. So I made something to one, for me to understand and really in depth understand it, and also maybe, for now I didn't do that yet, but maybe I can send them a schematic. And this is all made with Flutter, so it's quite nice that normally there is also another connector here that goes down. That's why I took the mixed one, but apparently that's not there. What we also have, but this again is work in progress. There's a lot of things that I'm doing this in my free time, and yeah. So then you can say, okay, I want certain kind of numerals on the clocks here. I never noticed this before, but you see these 4 stripes, and not an I and a V for the 4. On all the Belgian clocks, almost all the clocks in Europe, you see them like that. But you can choose different styles, and then you can have clock hands. But again, there's some errors in there. And then you can say what kind of finishing, do they have gold plate and all that. And then it all becomes different codes, which is again important for me to make the price code. And I can make it square as well. Oh, that doesn't really show. So yeah. Little by little, I'm progressing on this app, and I'm really happy that I can do this in Flutter, because then this Dart code is a lot more readable than Rust. so I'm quite happy with that. And also the result, I'm using this on Linux. I can make it for Windows now on this WebAssembly. And I could maybe make it smaller so it also works on mobile. This with the whole table here, that would not work so well on mobile, I think. But maybe I can do something where the technician in the field can say, okay, I have this configuration, I want to switch it, what do I have to do? And that it explains all that. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. Oh yeah, this topology is also interesting. Here you can say what's the topology of my site. So you start with down the sacristy, where you have the master clock to control everything, and then you have a tower maybe with several floors, or you have more towers, or there is a church with 2 towers somewhere in Hungary, and then there are 2 other churches nearby that are also controlled by the same one. It's all possible. Yeah. And here you can make a topology, and you can say, okay, these are my distances, and then you have already an idea. Okay, there I can use a serial, or there I need fiber, or stuff like that. So, questions?
Yeah, that was interesting to say, because we pretty much understood that this whole platform, let's say, is under development.
Yes, yeah, it's a work in progress,
Yeah,
definitely.
I get that. Do you also have like the code available? Because I'm interested more in the part of how this visualization, so let's say blueprint, has been made, because indeed it's like the whole view itself is like
The schematics. So for the schematics.
And I'm more interested in terms of, let's say, what Flutter libraries, if there are such, which help you to visualize this better, because in any case, for people which might be interested in this part, to visualize it well, to be very easily manageable, and for the people actually to understand just by seeing this view, is there any specific libraries that you used, and if so, which are they? Or did you use something completely different?
That is another thing. They call it vibe coding. So I mostly gave prompts to the AI, and it made all that for me. And then it was constantly a feedback loop to say, no, not like that.
My point was that indeed this is very meaningful, especially about the topology and the connectors, and especially the lines, and specifically the filters that you made with toggling on and toggling off specific something specific?
But I didn't use any kind of libraries that are made for that. So it's mostly classes that were made specifically to achieve this. I don't know if I can open source it. At the moment I put it on GitHub, but in a closed repository. But for now, I don't really know if usually I would simply say, okay, free software. That's my preference anyway. But for now, I didn't do that yet. Yeah. So yeah, it's mostly an example. Actually, the question came 1 week ago. Do you want to do a presentation? I say, yeah, okay, why not? Yeah. So yeah. But it's nothing specifically to make schematics. So it's all, it's actually all from the ground up that it created that code. Yeah.
So is it using custom painter?
So yeah, I think it's using this custom painter. Yeah, it's quite impressive what it what it managed to do with all that. So in Python, I don't think I would have gotten this far at all. Yeah. So yeah, you can actually click on those You can click here, and then you get a menu there, and then you can say I want to make one more connection from here to another node, and so on. So I want to go straight to the tower clock, and it's 50 meters, and this one is going to be fiber, which doesn't make sense, but so and then now there is a connection, a direct connection normally. So yeah. Actually, it's smarter than that because it knows it cannot make it with fiber, so it probably went to one. Here they are. So these are you need extra things. This is the fiber connection, and these are copper connections. So it knows that it needs to put something in between. But then here that doesn't make sense because this one doesn't have relays for the tower clock, but that's technical detail. And these things move together. Even this thing around it is drawn automatically. Yeah. And then it can become printed, so you can actually fill these things out. That's here with page setup. So yeah, I'm quite happy with it, but it's not really in production.
Okay. So, like I said, the star here is Xeno, okay? And this work came out from my internship with Common Sense Robotics in the beginning of this year. It was a stage, as we say. And in that stage, I had to figure out how to represent a UI for a robot that was doing certain movements. I needed to connect something mobile to a robot. At that point, I was like, well, what do? I found Xeno, and Xeno has bindings for almost every language there is on the planet. And all of them are free except C#, which you have to pay. Okay. But the bindings for Dart were not available. So my first task was to create the Dart bindings for Xeno, and that's an open source project, and hopefully, if everything goes well, I will be able to promote it to be the maintainer of that project, okay, for everybody. So, as I was saying, one of the things that you can have is a simulator. So this is a model of the robot. This program, written in Qt 15 years ago, it's called Arvis, okay? And what it does is that it's used for simulation. So when you send a command the app, what it's going to do is that there's two buttons there. I think you can see them. One says sleep and the other one says home. Those are the two basic positions on almost any robot, okay? This is the sleep position where it stays, and the home position is where you have you can start saying, okay, this is the coordinate system from which I'm going to develop more stuff, okay? So the app that I developed for Common Sense Robotics, that was demonstrated at the Hanover show in Hanover Messe, yes, Hanover Messe show in March, okay? This one, no, this was made this morning at 9:30. So, if all goes well, if I click home, you can see it on the visualize, yes. And when I go back here, it goes back. So what happened here? I clicked there, it sends a JSON package using Xeno, actually through the local loopback, okay? So there's no connection directly to the ROS package. There's a little broker, a ROS node broker that receives that JSON and then translates that, it's okay, I'll pet you soon. And there's a little broker that translates the message to the ROS motor controller. It needs a snack. It's not working on Xeno. Okay? And that's really an important thing. If you're more interested, I do have a basic, I did the basic counter, Flutter counter, using a C++ backend that does the counting, and then you just receive back the number. So it does the whole send and receive. Okay, it's open source. It's on my GitHub, and actually I use that sample to build this because I'm using, of course, Claude Code, but it's my template. It was my first template, and because of that, I could do this real quick. All right. So it's proven and it works. Any questions up to now? Yes, sir.
Because specifically you were explaining about Xeno along with ROS.
Yes.
My question is because me personally, I was developing something similar along with the home automation IoT part, but with the Kinix protocol, along with ETS software. And I was using because you also mentioned RTC, I was also using RTC provision from OpenAI, where I used to have a voice assistant, pretty much a voice assistant along made with Flutter, where I can turn on and turn off lights,
Yes.
pull on and off blinds on the windows,
Yes.
and actually play and stop music only using my voice assistant. So specifically my question, I don't know how familiar you are with the Kinix and ETS
No, but continue.
yeah. Specifically, would you be able, and somehow is it indeed and to a certain extent possible to do something like this, connecting, let's say, not Xeno and ROS, but Kinix and ETS in a way?
Okay, so ROS and Xeno are not connected, okay? Xeno is its own project, independent project that can be used by anybody to create distributed systems, okay? So for example, if I want to wire a whole house, and instead of using MQTT, okay, which is the normal thing to use, I want to use Xeno, I could do it, okay? Because it creates, every little thing becomes a peer, okay? And your home base is the router for all those peers. But unlike MQTT, where you have to go through there, actually all these things can talk to each other, okay? And if the home base goes down, it doesn't matter, they keep communicating to each other. Does that make a little bit more sense, okay? So that is the power of Xeno. That the ROS people use it is because they were using DDS. And DDS has issues. I'm not going to go into that because for those of you that are really into IoT, you know the issues. And it was a great effort to replace literally with DDS with Xeno, and it only came out last month, okay? All this work I did, the Xeno and the ROS, the version of ROS that has Xeno that works for me came out 2 weeks ago. So for the past 2 weeks, I had to take this that was built in 2018. It has 2 versions later of ROS. And ROS goes with every distribution of Ubuntu. So
it means that this is something very recent.
yes, yes, yes. I had to wait until the new version of Ubuntu. I downloaded the new version of ROS. This is probably one of the first integrations of using Flutter. This is actually Flutter with Sino, with ROS, using the latest of everything. It took me a while to upgrade everything because the C++ here was C17 and ROS also was C17 and now C20, and well, let me not go in there. It was a lot of coffee. Okay, so yes, this is basically the first demonstration of such a system. Okay? All right. Yes, sir.
And maybe still one question. The simulate itself, how does that work? Is that just a replica that you manually built, or is that something that is shipped with a...
This is one of the tools that's shipped with ROS. Okay? You download ROS. You download the desktop version of ROS, okay? Because this is not running the desktop version of ROS, no UI tools. And this is one of many tools that comes with it, okay? It's Qt based, and it's actually based on plugins. All of these things is a plugin. So you can create another plugin, for example, for another robot. It's a schema, and you load up another robot and it's used. So it's not specific to this robot. This is for the ROS community to use. And if you're like in a technical school here in Belgium and OS, yes, or Group T, then if you're in 3rd year doing robotics, this is the tool that you'll be using. Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
There's also something called Gazebo that's really cool, but that's for later. Yes. Any other questions? No questions about the protocol, please? No? Okay. Thank you very much for your time. I want to say thank you to Herman Brunix, my promoter and sponsor, and to Common Sense Robotics for lending me the robot. It's a loan. And for granting me the opportunity to start in this new path in my life. I'm having fun. Thank you. Yes. Okay.
All right, yes.
I can just, yeah. Take this off, take this off. I can take it away, make it more clear. Yeah. Actually,
Yes, okay. I'm here today to talk not about Flutter widgets or Flutter views or whatsoever. It's of course about Flutter, but it's like more into everything what happens around it and related to it, to starting a project more specific, the hidden work behind global ready apps. Now, I think most of us had a moment where it works, like our app runs on iOS, it runs on Android, it's fully available on the Apple App Store, on Google Play, which means immediately in Europe, in the States, most of the cases, dependingly how you configure it, of course. But now what? What if you want to go global? The first thing is, well, yeah, we're done, but yeah, you're actually not. So first things first, there is quite a big gap in what we see as, let's say, or most of us see as the familiar world and what eventually is the broader world. We're talking about, yeah, here with us, we're for most seeing, we have 2 stores, 2 operating systems, the default is all there. Most of it, we follow our European regulatory framework. We have our left to right languages, Latin character set, just 1 API environment and so on. But of course, that's not everything. There is way more than that. So it means, yeah, we can have the same app, same code base, but it's really a different reality. Now, maybe a good thing to know, and present myself a bit, I'm Bouke. I'm a technical lead right here and full stack developer at Aaltra, with my current, let's say, primary focus on Flutter, at least for the last 3-ish years, let's say. With Aaltra, we do various projects. We do startups, but we also have some major global players like Lockinox, Daikin, Atlas Copco, and so on. So it's right around the corner that this topic touches with our, let's say, work days. Now, one important, or the first important thing is that architecture is your survival tool right here. I think that it all rings a bell and it all sounds quite familiar. But yeah, of course, if you ever need to add something, this is really your basis. Now, I hope, let's say, but I do think that most of us will know, like, okay, we need to have layered separation of concerns. Okay, if you start from scratch, if you're in a startup context, it can all get some mingled up. But in general, the key insight is that you follow your layers, your UI layer, blocks or qubit, state management in general. There are some other types as well. Your application layer, which then is your domain, your repositories for your data abstraction and so on, and eventually a data layer, which can be an API client, Bluetooth client, and so on. Your file system even. The most important part here is that nothing, it should follow exactly that order. Nothing can be switched up to make sure that you have full overview of what your architecture is doing, of what, or let's say where you can intervene to make sure that your architecture is flexible enough. One of the things which I primarily focus on is to really make sure to make a distinction between what needs to be in singletons or can be in singletons, or let's say dependency injection with get-it and so on, or in a state/factory manner of building. When you talk about singletons, of course, it's one instance, it lives forever. You can use it across your full application. When you come back to your state, in most of the cases, it links down to your UI. When it comes back, for example, for block, you create a block or a qubit for within one view, or maybe a flow, depends on what your flexible way of working is. But it's actually one of the two, and the most important part there is, like I mentioned, to make a real distinguishment in what you're building and the features you're bringing to your application. This brings the pattern that it's always, you can always, for example, what we do with firmware updates and so on, as you heard before, we with Aaltra are working in IoT context. When we, for example, talk about firmwares, we always have a singleton in some way, which manages the firmware, which has default logic and so on, but eventually every block, so every state element or factory, which is adapted in a certain UI, which is adapted in a certain flow, will use that singleton. But of course, that state and factory will still stay a new instance per screen, and you make sure that it's layered that way. One code base, many entry points. What we here at Aaltra tend to do is to make sure that we can separate based on environment, but also separate in that environment, in that entry file, based on what we want to do within regions, within certain ways, to make sure that we have the flexibility to opt in or opt out, whatever we build in, whatever we want to initialize, whatever we need to do in which step of the process. That means that based on that, we can have different analytical systems, different authentication systems. It can have different identifiers, allowing certain features to be enabled or disabled based on environment, and in that environment also separate that for regions. Now, what we came across a couple of times with building global ready apps, one of the best examples which we built recently is the SmartLink app for Atlas Copco. You have quite different systems based on your location in the world. When you look at authentication, for example, with us in the States, it's OAuth, it's single sign-ons, you can sign in with Apple, Google, and so on and so on. Yeah, that's not the default way of authenticating in China, for example. In China, the default way of doing things is WeChat. Everything over there is WeChat, apparently, for one or another reason. But that's their main driver. Same thing with APIs. It's quite important, certainly with rules related to data residency and so on. Yeah, in Europe, you maybe want to use European-based URLs, European-based endpoints and keys, but that can, for were available, for example, in China or other regions. So yeah, be aware that offline first is really a design methodology right here, which can be a very important change or very important thing to think about at the beginning of your development. Now, what we noticed is when we focus too much on, okay, the app runs on network connection, we have it, it's available. Yeah, it tends to go into API-dependent initialization of your application. It tends to go into way too optimistic UI, thinking that, okay, the app will load once it starts, it will get all the data when it starts, and okay, you will have a success or a failure banner, but yeah, that's also very limited. Token refresh mechanisms and download, for example, for firmwares, download processes and so on. Where we saw that it easily breaks whenever a part of it is lacking right there. So how we actually solve it is really to make sure that in IoT context, for example, we use Bluetooth as a primary channel. Okay, Bluetooth has also some of, let's say, quirks in it. But when it comes back to configuration, diagnostics, firmware, we try to send and to look into having Bluetooth for that, primarily because you have the flexibility not only about being unreliable for a network, but also if you have the network, you can still do parallel activity right there, which you don't necessarily have if you go for hotspot methods or whatsoever. Pre-cached resources, make sure that we make always sure that we download them on Wi-Fi, so we can use it without Wi-Fi, and always queuing mechanisms on every level actually, when it comes back to event tracking, when it comes back to downloading firmwares, downloading files, when we do a creation or an edit flow, make sure that it's queued whenever you don't have network access, that you can always do it later on. Again, you can fully lock off your app, but that can conflict with other regions, with the global factor right there. Now, I didn't mention Bluetooth. It's a positive thing that you don't have any reliability into Bluetooth, primarily on how or the connection itself, but yeah, it's the same protocol, but it's completely different behavior on every operating system. I mean, we have iOS, we have Android, we also have some OEM-based operating systems. Yeah, you have OEM-based operating systems which run on Android, but you also have some very, let's say, strange Chinese OSs which are in there. They all differ. I mean, with Android, you can read the MAC address of your Bluetooth device. With iOS, you can't. You get anonymized UUIDs. That happened between COVID with the tracking where you are and if you met someone which had Corona and so on. Background scanning is different on iOS. You actually cannot do that. In Android, you can do that, but you need to open up a foreground process in your with your application and so on. And when it's OEM based, yeah, it's everything which can be done differently. Certainly on the Chinese operating systems, they do, sadly enough. Which brings, and I can assure you, which brings a lot of frustration into development onto that part. Again, what I said before in the architectural part, the native functionality, yeah, that's something which you eventually create in abstraction layers. Your business logic will or should, in this scenario, when you want to go global, be prepared to just do the same action. What happens behind that action, what happens behind that business logic, yeah, that's your abstraction layer, and that's on OS level itself, which you can defer upon. What I before mentioned, beyond Google and Apple, it's the two things we all know. I mean, it's the defaults. It's Google Play, it's Apple App Store, and everyone here has an iPhone or has a Pixel or a Samsung device. Very specifically, also for China, there are a lot of stores in China, like Tencent, Oppo, and so on, which you can also deploy to, which are there heavily used as well. Apple is heavily used. When it comes back to Android, Google is actually banned in China, so you cannot do anything with Google over there. So that means that you need to deploy to any of the stores I mentioned right there. Each store, just like with Google Play, just like with the Apple App Store, has its own review team, own review processes, standards which shift actually without notice. So just from one to the other day, it changes, and please adapt. We reject you and come back later. So it's a bit of a strange thing for most to release your apps in China. Important thing, when it comes back to the Chinese app stores, you can upload APKs, but they are running in sandboxed mode. Very specifically, and that's even worse the case in the new Huawei operating system. So Huawei over there deployed a new operating system, HarmonyOS Next. It's TypeScript based and it has some other UI layers all combined, but it's all built from scratch. They are not going as fast as they want with their new operating system, so they're extending their sandbox support of APKs, but they actually want to get rid of that. But that also means that, yeah, not every native functionality which you just have built into your Android application or in your iOS application will work eventually in those Chinese stores. Or if you downloaded that APK from your from the Chinese stores. The basics do work, but when you want to go some special, we noticed some issues with Bluetooth, with NFCs, such things. Yeah, then it's a whole different story, and then you need to go to the shell. Flutter currently, I saw a lot of GitHub issues already about the support of this onto the Flutter repo. Every time the same comment that they are not going to support it yet. I think I understand why, because it's a quite complex operating system which they just merged together. But yeah, it's an important thing to know. HarmonyOS Next in China is not yet rolled out so much. I'm going to say that in a very careful way, because it's really stepping up its game. It's running on everything. It's running on their fridges, on their phones, on their cars, on everything they want to run it over there. So just a small note there. Okay, I hope I'm not losing any one of you right here. I also hope I didn't lose anyone yet, because it's quite strategic what I'm bringing. I know, but it's what we experienced with building this. Yeah, now I'm deep diving in compliance. Yeah, it's the section which most of us likely skip or don't think about. Let's say we go from the assumption like, okay, the privacy policy is there, all good, thumbs up, we're ready. But that's actually not really the part. I listed here 6 frameworks which are used across 3 continents. Each of them affect your consent flow, for example, in your application. The topics right here is for most cybersecurity-wise and privacy-wise. There are a lot more of that. Europe is creating them whenever they feel like it. There are a lot of regulatory frameworks going out. But these 6 are really related to data storage, which analytics you can run, which data you can store, and so on and so on. Probably you know the GDPR. Well, you should know the GDPR. It's all over the place. The Cyber Resilience Act is a new one from Europe. But all the other ones, yeah, the people in China, it's a personal information legislation right there. They are way more strict than GDPR. So if you're already frustrated with the cookie banners right here, in China it gets worse. But yeah, these are all going on, which can affect your consent flows, data storage, analytics, as mentioned before. Quickly deep diving in a bit of those regulations. In an IoT app, which we built, yeah, of course, we use a lot of personal data. Serial numbers, MAC addresses are also concerned to be personal data right there. With the GDPR, of course, we want to have data minimization, right to deletion. It's all requirements which are in there. It's into GDPR. It's also getting a bit into the States in there. They are quite happy in the States that we have GDPR because it's that complex. They roll it, half of it out there as well within limits. Most important part right there is consent before collection. That's something which you always need to remind with GDPR. So what we actually did, or we try to do always, is consent gates, making sure that dependency injection registration, that's really based on which step of the consent flow you have done, what you agreed upon, where you continue with. When it comes back to local data layer, always purge your data in the maximum amount way whenever a session ends and you don't need the data anymore, that you don't have the risk that data sits on your device gets somewhere out there, and in a way you're the one responsible for the data which got leaked in one or another way. Analytics and crash reporting should respect consent. Just don't dump everything in Sentry, Crashlytics. like user identifiers if someone failed to log in, emails if someone failed to log in. Yeah, just don't add that. Yeah, and onboarding your user in your app, it's not, it's a legal flow. It's not just UX. It's not just saying like, okay, hey, welcome, we have this and this and this, and we will do this and this and this. Be aware about the fact that legally this is a really important part to have in your application as well. For China, it's a completely different world. Surprise, surprise. To be able to even release an app in China, you need to have a software license certificate. To have that, you need to provide the first 60 and the last 60 pages of your source code to the Chinese government. Exactly, where to start? I asked the same question, they couldn't respond me. The clients where we released to China with, and I can understand them, they just say like, let's just do the things which are not intellectual property and make sure that we have those. So it's out there. They have then we go to the certificate. But yeah, you need to send that over. Everything needs to be cleared out. You need to be a valid legal entity in China and so on. Your name needs to be compliant. You need to be PIPL confirmed, the Chinese privacy legislation. An important thing to note right there is that you cannot initialize anything at all in an app in China before the user has consented with the privacy flow. A very funny thing we came across. You have a package in Flutter where you can actually read out your version number and your package name and so on. I don't know it by heart. It's package info or something like that, if I remember it correctly. Package info actually also reads the sensors in advance you have on your mobile device. It's not allowed in China. So you cannot even read out the name of the app or the version of the app before you actually accepted the privacy policy. So the first thing which a user sees in an app in China is no welcome screen, no onboarding. It's like, hey, here are our terms, please accept, then we can only show you something. That's basically it, because you can literally not do anything else right there. Data residency, whereas here in Europe we're a bit more flexible, you need to let the user know where data is stored. In China, you can't. It needs to be stored in China, otherwise it's done. It's the same thing with the ICP filing. Everything needs to be hosted in China as well. So if you have an API, if you want to release your application in China, you need an API which is hosted in China with a Chinese provider, and it needs to be all right there. So it's not that you have the flexibility to just do it here, do it like that. Certainly not on servers of the big American corporates. So yeah, that's important one to know. So what we did for that, as mentioned before, consent gate, but then extremely in front. Making sure that we have the region-specific feature flags, as mentioned before, making sure that API routing switches per region are in place, separate backend providers, and the most important part, to always prove that you're doing the right thing to the Chinese government. Document a part of your source code, make sure that what you're doing, what you're embedding is documented right there. The new legislation here in Europe, it's the Cyber Resilience Act, very big topic which is coming up actually. It's secure by design. It's starting from, I think it's September 26, you have the requirement that anything related to a security incident is reported. Every CVE, Chinese guys are listening. So everything needs to be reported, you need to be secure by design, and the other robot stopped there, he doesn't need to be jealous anymore. Eh? Rise of the machines. Okay. But as mentioned, from September 26, you have the mandatory reporting. From December 27, you need to be fully SORA compliant. Everything related to software, to hardware, to connectivity needs to be in line with Cyber Resilience Act. It's foremost a lot of documentation which you need to do, create SBOMs and so on, which already would be a good thing to do today, of course. But yeah, it's still going on. So what we try to do, certainly to be in line, is already automate SBOM generation in our pipelines, make sure that we monitor the dependencies, that we can act upon it. Of course, know the package versions which are in production, that you can monitor it in a correct way. Yeah, the secure by design, it still happens a lot more than I would hope, but make sure that you use environment variables, that you use secure storage, not just use default passwords. I mean, it speaks for itself when you think about it, but it's far from reality, sadly enough. And then the last one, yeah, your security architecture needs to be documented. So make sure that if you lay down your architecture also on a security measurement, also on region-based, make sure it's documented, that you are aware of that. I already touched some of these, but yeah, of course, now everything is, let's say, merged to master. The CI/CD went green, but what's then? What comes next? That's all the build parts, let's say it like that. Shipping is not one button. I think we all know App Store Connect and Google Play. It's not always that straightforward as we would wish. But there are a lot of app stores out there. As I mentioned before, the review process from one or the other, yeah, some stricter, some less strict. The one takes 2 hours, like Google. The other takes 3 days, like Apple, in some occasions. The Chinese one wants to win. I think Oppo was the extremist one, that it took 7 days to get a review back. So you really need to be patient for that. Things what we try to do right there is staggered submission. Be aware about where you want to release, and release in the most strictest store first. Release it one time, test it. Go for close testing as well. Close testing needs to go through review. It already can solve a big part of things you missed, legislation-wise and so on, or compliance-wise with what Apple allows you to do, or Google allows you to do. When it comes back to the Chinese stores, we do have a log of what's rejected and why, because the 1 week you reject it, then you fix it, then they approve you, and then the week after they reject you for the exact same reason, while they approved you with the fix you did. It doesn't make a lot of sense. One of the funny ones right here is the discussions which which region is part of China and what not. I mean, the Macau discussion and all of that. I think there are 4 or 5 even, and then it's a discussion like, okay, do you need to say it's the Republic of China, or does it need to be between brackets or not between brackets? Can it be between brackets? Can you use the Chinese flag, or can you not use well, you should use the Chinese flag, but you cannot use their own flag. It's a lot of reasons which are throwing at you to be compliant right there.
You also put that in the feature flag?
Yeah. We try, what we try to do always is follow the ISO standards, but again, ISO standards are used across the world, but they do not apply in China apparently because of political reasons. So as best effort as we try to do to follow the things which we all agreed upon as a society, as the world, some regions tend to have their own vision, their own opinion, and that brings us back into being rejected for such things. The fact that the Hong Kong flag is shown with Hong Kong and not the Chinese flag, and so on. It's going in circles. And then the strange part is that one store accepts it and the other store doesn't, and then you ask yourself, but why? It's all China. But yeah, then again you get into that rejection flow. And then last thing, but nothing very much different, it's also the case with Apple and Google, of course. Don't assume your users run on the same version. Important one right here. You can fix what you can see. I think we all do that in most of the application. Make sure you have crash analytics, user and session tracking, performance and health tracking. It's almost something default we do these days, just for our own sanity, for most of the crash analytics, of course, and the user session tracking for marketing purposes. but it can really help to understand how your app is used globally, how your app is used in Asia, in the States, in Australia and so on. It really makes a big difference to see what gets blocked and what gets passed in certain features. So we really try to check that also to see if it differs from operating system. So important right there is what we always do is always segment it based on device, OS, region, store and app version to make sure that you have a clear view. A lot of the tools which you can use like a Sentry, like a Google Analytics and so on, they do it by default, but it's really good to have that if you want to go global and if you miss it, that you in extreme measurements add it as a custom property even. The CVE thing, I mentioned that before, certainly in Europe, you have the mandatory requirement to report that starting from September 2026 related to the Cyber Resilience Act. It means that whenever a CVE gets published, they assume that within an hour you notice it, that within 4 hours you can address your impact, and then within 24 hours you need to report to Europe, and within 27 hours you need to have a detailed report of it. A funny story, Europe wants you to report that in their platform. Europe also wants you to report that to your national security center, so here that's Cybersecurity Belgium. The platform to report that to Europe is still not finished.
Question about the 4 hours.
Yeah.
Can be automated, or should you bring up your developers in the
I normally it can be automated, but I assume that not everything will be able to be automated out of the box depending on your CVE, which has been discovered. So the biggest part right here is what you can do is what I mentioned before. Make sure that you have your SBOMs in your pipeline, that you know which versions you are using in production, that you can answer quite quickly, and to see how fast you can send out a patch. This is currently a European thing, but this will certainly go broader than Europe later on as well. It's way too important these days about what's happening also with wars going on, which is not necessarily fully with artillery and whatsoever. It's getting way bigger on a digital level as well. So I talked a lot, I think. So some core takeaways which I want to pass you along related to what I shared today is, first of all, abstractions are cheap when you're doing them on day one. Retrofitting them later can cost you months, even not hours. It will cost you days and months when you need to do some big changes on architectural level. Example is the privacy policy flows. If you build it with the European mindset, you have some room before the privacy policy. For China you don't. It's quite a big part to fully rewrite the startup of your app to make sure that it's allowed. Offline first is an architectural decision, not a feature you can bolt on after launch. It's something which I really focus on and take away. That does not mean that you are fully going with an offline mode from the start. Just be aware when building your architecture that it's ready, that it sits there, and that you have the flexibility to go with that. Compliance doesn't just shape your legal page, so it's not just the text with your privacy policy. It really changes your code and your flow sequences which you want to bring. Something I assume we all already do, but always test the worst case scenario on every level, connectivity which doesn't work or whatsoever. So weakest signals, longest string, like Dutch being 30% longer. I think French or German even is somewhat worse, so give it a try with some other languages as well. And then last but not least, global ready doesn't start for us then when the client asks for it, or when you think you want to go global. It actually starts at the moment you're writing your main. So architecture, compliance, modularity, strategy, for me they are, and here at Aaltra we really do not see them as things you bolt on when someone asks for it, or you want to go to China or whatsoever. It's literally a foundation which we build upon to have the flexibility, to have the modularity to go as wide as possible. And the best time to build that foundation is before you actually write a single line of code about certain features. So yeah, don't build features, build systems. That's it. Any questions? Yes?
We know mobile app development can be very complicated in itself, and we have a bunch of devices, like mid-segment devices, high-end devices, low-end devices, different OSs. Now you mentioned about the Chinese OSs. So like seeing all these things as a combine, how do you target the testing? Because it can be very tedious task to test your app on.
Yeah, it's something very difficult. What we actually did, or at least what Peter did, is we actually have a Chinese Huawei device here at our office. It's completely locked off from our own network on purpose. The device is a very special device. Half is we set it up in English, but still half is in Chinese. You get a lot of commercials for one or another reason in every application, not only app stores or browsers, even just between messages and on your home screens. But that's the main thing what we tend to do. Make sure that we have the devices available, make sure that we can test it as broad as possible. A lot of the things, as mentioned before, we try to build in feature flags, region-based, so then we have the power, or then it's right in our own hands to just select China and to make sure that it works like that. When it comes back for authentication, for example, WeChat is available here in Belgium. I did do some tests also on an isolated device with WeChat. So we can test it right here, but of course that's not with everything the case, because for example WeChat is blocked in India, so there you cannot use it at all, if I remember it correctly. So making sure that you can test everything or that you can implement everything based on a region, it's not always that straightforward, sadly enough.
So what's your strategy when you look for the new region? Yeah, that's a new region where we are going to launch an app. So what are the checklists you have? Maybe you may have a long list or something with your experience. Okay, I need to look into these stuff before going to plan or make a plan of attack.
Well, the most important thing is what I mentioned in the beginning is your architecture. I think if you work interface based, if you work really modular, then you have the flexibility to go as broad as possible. A checklist is somewhat broad because it really depends onto a feature we want to bring to an application. Whenever a feature is intended to go into an application, it always advances with a functional analysis and a technical analysis to be aware what is going on and what needs to happen. But the fact that you set up a modular architecture, the fact with the interface and so on, allows you to shift quite quickly, that if you do want another authentication method, for example, that you can shift and that you don't need to fully update your full current code to make sure that it's compliant. And with most of the cases, that goes quite straightforward. The best thing in the scenarios which we came across is that it's always, certainly in the review processes even, to have a contact point, for example, in China, when it comes back to that region. The people in China, I don't think it's a surprise, but when they communicate to each other, for example, for the review process, it's way faster accepted than when we communicate related to a report. They are way more strict with someone from the EU or the United States to share insights or to give a reason for some mitigation or for some way of implementation than someone who is actually from, who originated or origin is in China.
Thank you so much. It seems like you have a lot of sleepless nights.
I'm always like this, very energetic.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the very insightful talk. I don't think I've listened to anybody say China this much since Donald Trump, but this was definitely much more insightful. What I was curious of is when you, how does your branching system work for this? And do you always release to all stores, or do you have certain releases that only go to certain stores and so on?
What we mainly try to do in the situations where we have global ready apps is that we do release them to Chinese stores. We do check the market share in China. I'm going to repeat China a couple of times, just that you are not getting confused. But yeah, we check the market share of regions where, for most clients of us, want to release, and we see how much the market is populated towards the store, and those stores we release. Whenever we do release the app, it is the intent to do it on all stores because it's very feature driven, which we build upon, and it does not mean that a feature which we release right here in Europe is not intended for Chinese market, for example. So that's what I meant with the architectural part. It's way stronger, let's say, to work with the feature flags and to have it into your code base. Certainly because it's Flutter, it's cross-platform, so you have that factor right there. It's way easier to do it that way rather than to lock things off. The thing what I always do try to check in analysis, depending on which app is being built, is which third-party services can be used and can be used in different regions. It's what I mentioned before. Google is not allowed at all in China, no Firebase, no Crashlytics, no Analytics, nothing, also no Google services whatsoever. So you need to go to alternatives. Same thing with push notifications and so on. I mean, it's a hassle and it's a lot of research, and the third-party tools do not work as good as a Google or whatsoever. Within China, they are also tending to close the door for Microsoft. So they are quietly isolating themselves. So how it's going to go with that is for me a question mark, but it's always good to, again, have your architecture ready and then make sure that whatever is going on, that you can switch quite easily and you don't need to rebuild half of your application because China, last time, decides that Microsoft is not allowed anymore, for example.
Indeed, very interesting talk. The part that I was wondering is, how do you release your app for iOS then in China? Is it a separate app actually? Or
No.
is it the
for
same?
iOS, it's the exact same thing. So you can still use App Store Connect, you can...
And is it a separate app that you release? As in, no.
It's exactly the same app.
And how do you then check if you're in China to show the privacy policy first?
At this moment, we trust the user for most cases. So the user selects their country.
They just okay. So that's the.
That's also an option to do that. The thing with that is, of course, that with the fact that your APIs are not accessible, well, APIs here in Europe or the States, they are not accessible within China. Whatever they select another country and they get another privacy policy, it will be knocked off just by their network. So it will be blocked in a way. You cannot do much more than or release it as a separate app or ask the user, because before you show the privacy policy, you cannot read out the country, so you cannot base it on that. So that are actually your only two solutions you have.
Yeah, indeed.
But that really depends on the context and I think most of all the business context of the application itself you want to release.
And then for the other stores, you already know you're in the China-specific stores, so you skip the country selection?
For some occasions, but not every occasion, to have the flexibility between parentheses. But that's a bit of the difficult part right there. Even there, if you want to defer that, it would be a lot of additional work to make sure that everything is just working with us and then doing something different for other regions. And some occasions that also you build in a phased way. And then you have something like, okay, now we do it in a generic way, we do it for all of them, and then you can build on top of that to make it, let's say, more straightforward for us than it is in certain regions. But at this moment, it's the same for
interesting
for every region.
Nice. Anyone else?
Should I talk into this? Okay. Yeah. If you're talking about you have an app production live in China, in Europe, in the US. You've talked about all the different ways to do analytics, backend, whatever. How do you keep? I know the word in Dutch, but how do you keep everything tracked? Because it sounds like you have like 6 different services running for the same app in different countries.
Yeah.
How do you do, for instance, analytics? Is it like 4 platforms that all?
Well, as mentioned beforehand, when looking into this, when analyzing this, I tend to look into tools, third-party services, which are open or flexible to every region. When it comes back to analytical tracking, for example, Mixpanel can be used instead of Google Analytics. When you're not using Crashlytics for Google, then you go to Sentry and so on. The only important thing with those providers is to make sure to really read through the data residency part into their configuration, that you're doing the right thing right there. But most of it, again between parentheses, a lot is still allowed in China, just with a lot more gates and just no big names like Google's and so on.
So you make a selection that every region is serviced by.
Yeah, and then for follow up or on our end, we try to make it as easy as possible to, for example, hook in Crashlytics and Sentry into a Slack channel to make sure that we can follow it up right there, to combine it in that way. So we at least have direct ways to see what's going on. And that's actually a bit of the only thing what you can do at that point. Or you need to write your own custom application to combine everything, and then you're already a step further, of course.
Yeah, maybe as the last question, not to take any more time, it's a bit of a joke question, but at the same time it's quite serious. On the part...
You're making me quite curious right now.
On the part where you mentioned it's very specific region-wise, having in mind that China is a very big country and you have to be very intact on which region is what is allowed, what is not allowed, whether you can use the flag, whether you cannot use it. And all of these, as you said, is also based on the political reasons. I was wondering if our client wants to deploy and ship an app to Taiwan, whether we have to go through the Chinese jurisdiction or it's something completely independent.
No, you will need to go through the China
again
mindset. Yeah,
even though it's a separate country.
But because every store in that region is actually within the Chinese ecosystem, so you need to go through there to be aware about what's going on and whatnot. So you don't have much.
Pretty much everything which is around China has to go under their approval. Let's say, if you want to work along with them.
Let's say that I did a lot of back and forth with the reviewers of the Oppo App Store and the Tencent App Stores and so on to make sure that everything is compliant. It was quite a hassle. To be honest, whenever we were building this, in first hand, the political reasons, it was not something which came to my mind. I was really like, okay, we're following the ISO standards, it's quite straightforward. It spoke for itself. Maybe that's a bit naive in a way, I'm not sure. But it was strictly due to the fact that all those stores just rejected bit by bit to be published right there. The strange part though is that the rejection only came from the third-party stores when it came on Android builds, on APKs. We never heard about an issue from Apple that we were not compliant. So it really depends on the origin of the store itself and the manufacturer of the devices. Okay, thank you very much.
goes as fast as your network, basically. And because if you use something like throw balls or flat buffers or something like that, then you gain a little bit more. Okay, sometimes if you're doing like, then it has a query system. So you can say, okay, I need to get this information. Actually, because every node, every peer is listening to a message. Okay, so they're just sitting there. So if this one doesn't know it, it sends it to the next one, it sends it to the next one, it sends it to the next one.
2, 3. Like and subscribe.
Top. I hope everyone is still awake. Great, because I'm not. I want to start with a project that changed a bit how I think about Flutter and its integrations with hardware. We were building a frictionless flow. It was a simple ID. The user walks near a device, the app detects it and triggers the device. The app should react automatically, user doesn't have to know anything about it. On paper we had everything, but when we test the system in a real user scenario, it failed. Hello everyone, I am Tel. I am a full stack developer here at Aaltra. I was a backend dev that turned mobile. Well, actually, my Flutter, how do you say it, career started 3 years ago when I first joined the FlutterCon Europe, inspired by Flutter Belgium actually, that we joined as Aaltra. And I was sold. I thought this is really nice and I wanted to learn it as well and build things with it. And so for the last 2 years, I've been building apps that interact with hardware here at Aaltra. And today I'm going to give some lessons I learned along the way. Building apps is one thing, but when you're building apps that talk to hardware, that is a whole other thing. You're not just building apps with UI, speaking to APIs, state management, navigation, that all comes with it. But when you're working with hardware, there are other constraints that are coming with connectivity, permissions, device behavior, operating system behavior, timing of things, and so on. And some integration categories are common enough that the ecosystem is more mature. A few examples are, for example, Bluetooth accessories, camera and media capture, GPS location, notifications. These are all things that are highly contributed within the ecosystem of Flutter and the packages. You have mature packages that you can use, even a lot of different ones, and large communities that can support you when you need help. Also a lot of examples and documentation to help you further improve your implementation. And well, when you work with real hardware, you're not always sure on what you're going to get. Not every hardware is the same. Not every sensor is the same. And in this case, sometimes you have to work with vendor-specific SDKs or custom device protocols to communicate with the device, or even workflows that depend on background behavior or the operating system lifecycle. So how do I decide what to do next? Do I trust the package? Do I adapt what exists? Or do I build something custom? Even moving a critical part of your system native could be a solution. Well, maybe the ownership ladder can help you. It's a kind of a mental model I've been using for myself, which I want to introduce to you now. And I started thinking when I'm integrating Flutter apps with this kind of mental model. And sometimes you get lucky. When you have to work on a project, it's maybe a common problem that you're trying to resolve, and you have a package in the mature ecosystem that is actively being maintained by the community, good documentation, and you're ready. You can use it, you can implement it. It will take some time, of course, but you already have a step for you. And this is the first step in my ladder, is that you just use the package that are there for you. An important thing with using packages, I think, is that you have to evaluate if a package is right for you. Not every package that is available on top dev is a right fit for your use case or for your project.
So I like to go on a checklist, and what I do is look at the maturity of the package I want to use. Are there recent releases? How is the maintenance of the GitHub issues? Is there a backlog of 100 tickets, or are there 2 tickets and they are actively being maintained? It's a big giveaway of how much errors maybe you will be encountering while you're developing with it, and if it's a good fit for your project. Because of course, here at Aaltra we're building apps for production-ready apps for users, so we don't want unexpected issues. Documentation quality, platform support, and an example app. It's all important to look at when you're choosing a package. And this is kind of a checklist I'm going through whenever I need one for a feature. But sometimes you miss the 10%. What I mean by that, a package you're looking at is very close to what you need, but it misses some details that are key to what you're trying to build. And here we are on step 2 of the ladder, and it is tweak the package. And what I mean by that is maybe a package is already a right fit for you, but it misses just that tiny detail that would complete the whole package for you. And at that point, sometimes just local modifications to the package that help you further can already help you further in developing. But of course, you don't want to keep maintaining a fork of a package within your project. So if it's a right fit, maybe you can even contribute the changes back to the package and it becomes available for everyone. And I'd like to talk about an example actually for this case. And this is a project I worked on, actually proof of concept for a audio measurement device for the mobile app. Maybe to also give some context, what I'm talking about here is more about native or mobile apps than about other platforms. But for example here, there was a case where a client had a measurement device, and they had a product that, or a laptop, desktop app that could already do what they wanted. But it was important for us to check how feasible it was to bring it to mobile, because their users, it would be a really great addition for them, for users to be able to have this functionality in an app. And what we needed was to be able to detect the device. It behaved like a USB device as actually a microphone. We had to record the measurement, save it as a file, and share the result. And if you think about it, these things are readily available within the ecosystem. You will definitely find a lot of packages that can help you building these things. And so the packages covered a lot, but not everything was a full match. For example, some requirements we got about the files, about the measurements were really important. And at that moment, you don't have a full fit. And it was, the hard part wasn't recording audio, it was producing the right file, right? So the feature in itself was not the hard part, it was making it and making it possible. But in the end, it was producing the right output for this client that was important. And there were some requirements. I cannot give every requirement here. But the package that we found, it was for measurement or audio measurements. I'm not sure how it's called. Probably something with record, Flutter record. If you're interested, I can maybe after the talk about it. And the package got us really far. But the missing part was important, and it was not there. What did we do? We went and looked for the multiple packages that are available. This was a proof of concept. You need to move fast. We wanted to check feasibility. So we compared the packages that are available, and we chose the closest fit. What fits our use case the most? And once we found that package, we took a local version of it, modified some things, and that got us to continue with this project. Here is just a little snippet, maybe for people who are interested. just little snippets of what we changed of native code for the audio measurements. For example, here we had to have a 24-bit samples of audio, and this package didn't support it, and we thought it was maybe an easy thing to update, so we wrote and added some code. We actually, with this, for this proof of concept, we broke kind of some existing functionality to make it work for us. But in the end, we changed, or we added 3 new methods and 4 updated methods. So in the end, it was not really a lot of things, and potentially this is something we could also contribute back to the community, as it's maybe a thing other people also would like to use. With this second step, I have also kind of a checklist. When you're choosing a package and you are at the point that you say, okay, this is not the complete fit for me, then I start comparing the packages. I start to validate against what we really need, also more earlier now. I see, okay, we need to have this file output. We're not just starting development, also, are we going to be able to get this output with what we're trying to build? And so we validate against the requirements, check whether the missing part in the package is critical or not, and then decide whether we're going to do some local tweaks or maybe have our own custom implementation. Of course, we want to avoid long-term forks, like I said, and maybe contribute to the package, so it also spares us from a headache of maintaining it. And sometimes the ecosystem is just not enough. Sometimes we're working with really niche hardware that only has vendor-specific support or using custom protocols. And there is no real match within the Flutter ecosystem to build what you're trying to build, right? And in this case, we're on step 3 of the ladder, and it is build your own integration. When there's nothing for you, you have to build it yourself. And this is also in our case I would like to talk about, is a project, also again started as a proof of concept, where the client came to us and they had a piece of hardware. It's actually a chip provided by ST Microelectronics. They are a manufacturer of chips, and one of their series of chips, ST25, uses NFC, but they actually use a specific protocol. So you have different kind of NFC protocols to communicate, and here ST has made their own protocol. It's kind of a mailbox system. Normally with NFC, you write and read records. Very simplistic. With this protocol, it was kind of a mailbox, a memory buffer, and between the chip and the phone, you could read and write messages on that mailbox. It was actually a memory buffer that you could use to read and write messages on. And this is very custom and specific. And so the client came to us with, is this possible? Can we make this? Can we make an app of this? And so, yeah, we started and we looked for how we would solve this issue, because every technical issue can be solved, of course. But what do you have? The solution we tried to fix was the fact that we're working with a custom protocol provided by this company of their chips. There was no real community. There was no package available for this communication protocol. And so what did we have? We had a vendor example. So the ST had an app where you could just scan an NFC tag and got some information. And yeah, it was kind of basic. And next to that, they had an Android Java library, very nice, that they used, and an Objective-C port on iOS. And actually, this Objective-C port was basically the Android Java library that has been ported to Objective-C with Java to Objective-C. It's a tool. And even better, this port of iOS was not readily available. It was integrated within an example and spread towards their whole app. So you could not even know, what I'm going to use. You have to solve the puzzle to see, okay, this is the package we're trying to use. And so we had to compare a lot with the Android Java library to figure out how to get this to work. And so what did we not have? We didn't have Flutter package support. We didn't have broad community support. The only support I found and got was on their own forum with messages of maybe 3 years ago or 4 years ago with people with the same questions. And as a lot of things, no answer. So this was really nice. It was a big challenge, but a nice challenge actually. And so we continued. And the first thing that worked was our Android implementation because it was the most readily available thing. And so we started with creating our own native Android app to be able to just already communicate with their chip, do the communication that we want, and see does it work. Because the whole thing of this proof of concept was, is it even possible? Is your thing that you're trying to make, is it even possible? And this was a really big thing because it already proved it was possible. Now we just had to make it work for iOS. Well, it was not very easy to integrate. As I already said, it was tangled within the package. So when you extract the package and move all the files that you need and just puzzle everything together and you try to run it, of course, it doesn't run first time. You have build errors, configuration issues, the usual Xcode issues that you have. I don't have to explain that, I guess. But in the end, we got it working. Our iOS app worked and we could do some communication. And at that point, it was just an integration problem. How would we work and get this native implementation to work in Flutter? But that part is not the hardest part. We got the hardest part already working. And so when do you decide when to build something custom? Because you don't, it's easy to think that you want to build things custom, but within Flutter you have so many options and opportunities because the ecosystem is so large. So I don't usually think about creating always a custom solution. You don't have to invent the wheel again. But of course, if there is no ecosystem match or the requirements of your client or the project are just too specific, for example, the protocol is too custom or the communication is custom or there is no support, then forcing packages might just cost more in the end than building it yourself. And that is kind of also again a checklist that I go through, like is this the right way or should we create it ourselves? And for this specific case I just explained, building the own package was the right choice because in the end we got it working and the client was very happy about it. Well, if you don't use the package or you don't create your own integration, sometimes the issue is a bit further. And sometimes the workflow just needs a different owner. What do I mean with that? With owner, when you're building Flutter apps and you're just using packages, well, you don't actually own the code. You have an easy integration or an easy interface to work with it, and the code is being owned by someone else and maintained by someone else, and you can just easily use it. But sometimes when you have specific background behavior or operating system wake-up logic or specific timings, a frictionless experience that you have to build, sometimes it's just the right call to move things natively. And here I want to talk about a third case, which was the frictionless integration I briefly mentioned at the start. A frictionless integration of the background flow. And so to give a bit more specifics, we were building, or we actually already had a Flutter app for this client. And now this was a new feature, a new flow we wanted to add to this app. And it was a device, or it is a device actually, and the user, or this should be triggered when the user gets in the vicinity. And so the flow we thought up together with the client and the specific, constraints we already had with the hardware. We came up with geofencing, beacon monitoring, and Bluetooth communication To maybe give some information for the people who don't know it, geofencing is actually a kind of area that you can have around a certain coordinate. And the operating system like Android and Apple and iOS, they can detect when you enter such an area. The operating system, how do you say it, pulls to this location and also notices if you're within a certain area, if this is configured, of course. Once this user is in a certain area of the device, we start monitoring for a beacon. It's actually the iBeacon protocol, and so when you have a Bluetooth device, it can advertise a certain package, and you can look for that specific advertisement, and it is a power-friendlier way of detecting, how do you say it, devices or Bluetooth device. And once we monitored and we were in a certain area of this device, we could start with communicating and starting to send a trigger. And this was the whole flow. Yeah, this was straightforward. It was a little animation. Well, why we tried this first? Sorry, I didn't say what we tried first. Well, we used packages for this. Because again, we started with a proof of concept and we had to prove, or we had to get some result within a certain amount of time. And so there are I'm not speaking well. There are a lot of packages readily available for these specific communication, like geofencing, beacon, and certainly Bluetooth. There are a lot of packages available for you to use, and so first thing we of course did is look for the right fits, like I explained before. Look for the right fits and start using it. It's the most pragmatic way of working. We already had the Flutter app, so it was the how do you say it, straightforward step to take. And so each step had a package support. It was a proof of concept, and we wanted to validate the feasibility before going native, because of course we know that background flow is a really important thing, and background and Flutter and just any app is a really pain in the ass, to say it like that. Not talking from personal experience. So all the pieces existed, but the question was whether the workflow would survive reality, and that's where we came at. Everything worked, right? I was working in a development friendly environment, like Bach was already saying before in his talk. We have good internet here, but that is not the only thing when you're developing. Actually, most of the situations are optimal when you're developing. You are just behind your PC, and most of the things will work. And in this case, what really failed is when we started testing and handing out here at the office the app to really test, we found that the background was not very reliable. When colleagues went home and came back to see if the device detected or the device triggered, well, it didn't do anything. There are long inactive periods, something you can't really simulate by just standing behind your desk. And so this was actually the exact reality of a user. Let's talk further first. Well, what did we do? Maybe I'm a slide missing, but that's okay. What did we do? Well, we decided to move this critical flow native. We had everything up, we had everything. The whole flow was worked out with these Flutter packages. But I was not very satisfied with the way it was working, because yeah, if the real scenario of a user is not working, then is it really proving that your concept is working? I didn't think so. So I tried to use my best friend AI to help me and translate all of my logic I wrote in Flutter using these packages and translate it in a native solution. And in actually not a lot of time, it translated everything. It was a bit of debugging, and the first few tests were just, how do you say it, an eye-opener. I just could close my app. I could simulate that I would leave and come back to the office and everything would work. And this was not the case with Flutter. maybe to come back on why this didn't work, we had 3 or more packages, and if you would use one of these packages, maybe your implementation would work. But here everything had to work together, right? Not just one package that had to do background and a service that had to maybe upload things to an API, right? But here everything had to work together. And when your app is inactive for a long time, your operating system looks at which apps are using a lot of resources, and most of the time your Flutter apps might use a bit more resources than native apps, and they could be killed for background things. And even besides that, background operations are easily killed on all the operating systems currently. We are very restricted with what we can do, and yeah, this is if I'm not talking fast enough. Lost where I was telling. Let me drink. Yes, and indeed, thank you. So the Flutter app packages had to work together, and once your app is in the background or you even killed it, the Flutter engine was just killed, and when a geofence notification would come in, this would work because it's that one package, but it had to go back to activating the beacon monitoring. That didn't work. We couldn't communicate back to another package, and that's the real reason why we moved native. And here again, I have some a list of checks that maybe can help you to decide if you really need to move your path native. And for example, does the feature depend on operating system behavior? Does it need background support? Does it need a frictionless feel, right? If the user doesn't need to interact, well, everything needs to work out of the box. And in that case, mostly you have to go native because then you can have more control of the operating system, even though you don't have a lot of control. And does it need to survive long inactivity? And some other checks like timing or wake-up behavior. And yeah, this is why we eventually decided for this integration. And to go back actually to the full ladder, sometimes you get lucky and you can use your package. Sometimes you miss that 10% and you tweak the package. Sometimes the ecosystem is not enough and you have to build your integration. And sometimes when the workflow is critical enough and has some criteria, you just have to move it native to make it work for your use case. And to end with a note, the package ecosystem is the best place to start, but it's not always the best place to stop. The real skill is deciding what your use case really needs, and the real job is also deciding what to own. And for me, that is what extending Flutter for real-world hardware means. Thank you all, and if you have questions, go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't really have a question, but I noticed something during your talk.
Yes?
The first talk that we gave at Flutter Belgium, the topic was more like, is the community big enough?
Mm-hmm.
And is the ecosystem big enough? And yeah, the talk that you're now giving is the Flutter community is very big. We have a lot of packages, so I think that's very nice to see. Flutter exists for how long now?
10 years, I think.
Almost 10 years. So very nice to see the progress that
it really is. It's nice to see how much the community helps each other out and how much there is really available to use as a developer.
Who here has published a package on PubDev before? All right, nice. Cool. That was not really a question.
Thank you for the not question.
I have a small question.
Yes.
The second part, it was about when you need to adopt 10%.
Yes.
This was a proof of concept, but when it's a production for a client, then what would you use? Would you use your adopted package until production, or would you wait until it's further accepted upstream on the original package?
Well, I think it depends on
The situation.
the situation. And actually, I think maybe for this implementation, you can start by tweaking the package, and maybe if you think that this tweak is not general enough, this starts to move to the next step in the ladder, and you have to build your own custom integration. But I think if you really want to go back of already publishing with a package locally or already updated upstream, I think that's kind of a personal preference. I would prefer that I wouldn't have to maintain a package when if something gets updated on the package. But of course, you don't always control your situation, and if your change is not a fit for the package, maybe it just doesn't get accepted either. But I think
so it depends. It depends.
Yes, exactly. It depends. I have to say that.
Have you found yourself in a situation where you see, oh, it's almost it, but it's not it? It's on GitHub, I'll just fork it and do my own thing.
Yes, that's actually when I talked about the... Oh, sorry, yeah.
No. I agree with your assignment. I also go, yes, but then it's the maintaining it question that follows up.
Yeah, I think it's kind of couples a bit with the question before. Again, if your change can be published on the package itself, I think that's the right way to go for yourself, but also just the community. Well, if the change is really very specific, well, then you have to make the choice. Do you want to keep maintaining your package locally, or do you just want to create your own integration and own it yourself? And that's a bit of a decision you have to make. What part do you want to own? And I think that depends from use case to use case. And of course the time and budget you have for doing those things.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
I think we will now go to the raffle. So the raffle is open, and the password was